October. Since this is a public meeting, there's a protocol to be read through, which I will do now. All visitors must sign into the visitor book at Kilmancraig's reception. This includes council staff from other buildings. There's no planned fire evacuation drill or alarm test today, so if the fire alarm is activated during your visit, you must exit the building immediately. Council officers will direct you to the nearest fire exit and will escort visitors to the building fire assembly point beside the Silver Man at the top of Parliament Walk, where you can check in with reception staff. Kilmancraig staff should report to their own floor's assembly point. You should remain at that assembly point until directed to reoccupy the building and only re-enter once the fire marshal has advised it is safe to do so. Please do not attempt to leave the site by vehicle until cleared to do so by the fire marshal to ensure that access routes are kept clear for any emergency vehicles attending. Please note that this is a public meeting and that members of the public may be in attendance. The meeting will be recorded by the clerk, published online for view and published online for viewing. The taking of photographs, including screenshots, audio or video recordings, are not permitted during meetings unless with the express permission of the convener, that is I. Can members attending virtually activate their cameras where possible to enable you to join by video, and can all attendees mute their microphones when not speaking? And please do not come in during items unless I invite you to do so. If members attending virtually wish to speak on any point, please indicate by clicking on the Raise Your Hand button. Members in the chamber should also raise their hands, and I will bring you in at the appropriate time. If any members have not been able to access all the papers at the meeting, please indicate now. That's fine. Okay, I think I will not bother with the roll call. Right, we'll just crack on. Fine. First of all, I'm going to introduce the members attending today. On my right, I have Councillors Balsillie and Fairley, who are two of the three members of the local review body, and attending virtually online is Fiona Gordon, our independent planning expert. We'll be hearing from Fiona shortly. Okay, right. What I'm going to do now is ask the clerk to sort of set the legal framework for this meeting and the options that the committee has, and then the scope that it has to take those decisions. Please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I know it's been a while since we've had our last LRB, so I just thought I would just remind the board just exactly what the legal position is. So what you've got is a planning application which has been refused and under delegated authority sits with the board because of the appeal process to make a decision as to either one, accept the officer's decision, or to reverse that decision. The way the LRB works is there is no requirement for the applicant or indeed anybody other than those here in attendance in terms of the board to speak. If the board does decide to ask for, say, the applicant or anybody else to speak, then it becomes what's known as a hearing. And if it's a hearing, then we would have to adjourn to allow for, one, to make sure we've got everybody in place to speak, because the whole point of it is being fair and transparent. So if we have, say, statutory consultees, etc., that need to come into that discussion in terms of the realms of a hearing. But the other thing is, of course, is that if you need further information, that's deemed to be called written submissions. So again, we would just have to adjourn, get whatever information, if it's from a third party, for the board to allow them to, make their decision on the application. The final thing is a site visit, and again, a site visit would require us to organise transportation, get these out there, having a look. So again, we would adjourn and reconvene at a later date for all those options. The applicant has indicated that none of those they're looking for this particular board. So the question is, at the moment, is whether you feel, subject to once you've heard Fiona Gordon in terms of that covering note, who, as the chair's confirmed, are your legal planning expert. She's also a legal planning expert as well. If you've got enough information in terms of the notice and the report of handling and all the documentations to be able to allow you to make a decision today on that application. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, well, I think without any further delay, we'll ask Fiona to come in now and give us a précis of the case. Fiona.
Thank you. Good morning. Yes, as Mrs. Robertson said, I'm the independent planning advisor for this morning's review panel. I'm a legal director with Adelshaw Goddard Solicitors. I have reviewed, obviously, the delegated decision, and we'll just give you a summary of the application, the decision, and the policies that are of relevance here today. And I'm obviously available to answer any questions you may have afterwards. So this is a review of the refusal of an application for planning permission in principle over land northwest of Devonbank Cottage, Fish Cross. It's for change of use to a residential house plot. There's a full consideration of the application set out in Mr. Johnston's report from page 43 of your pack. The applicant for the application is Malcolm Watt. The landowner is a Mr. George Grieve. Firstly, just a summary of the site and the surrounds. So the application site is out with the settlement boundary. It's classed as countryside and it's currently in use as grazing land. There's no development on the site itself. While there is development on land adjacent to the site, this has been granted over the years subject to the applicable policies. The wider area was previously a colliery, Devonbank Colliery, with restoration having taken place in the 1980s to return the land to a natural state. There's a site plan at page 41 of your pack, which would be useful at the moment to look at the development in the surrounding area. There is a chalet in the field to the north of the site. This does not have planning approval and should have been removed from site. A small cabin linked to animal welfare use has been approved in its place. That's under planning reference 200251 FULL. Land to the east of the site is used for grazing. That's under the ownership of the same landowner. To the south, over the private road, is the Wildlife Rescue Centre and Devonbank Cottage. Devonbank Cottage has been in existence for in excess of 30 years and was extended under an application in 1999. The Devon Riding Centre is to the southeast and has been granted permission for temporary residential accommodation and a staff welfare building in 2018, and more recently 4 glamping pods, campervan parking and a kennels building in 2023. The house to the west of the site, the Birches, is linked to the Wildlife Rescue Centre and its occupation restricted by a Section 75 agreement to persons involved in the running and management of the centre only. The decision that was made is based on 2 reasons for refusal. I'll take you through each of those. The first is that the site lies within an area identified as countryside in the adopted Clackmannanshire LDP of 2015. The proposed house on the site is not considered to satisfy any of the criteria or circumstances set out in policies 17, Rural Homes, and 29, Rural Development, of NPF 4, or policies SC23, Development in the Countryside General Principles, and SC24, Residential Development in the Countryside, of the Clackmannanshire LDP, adopted 2015, which could justify the development of a house in this countryside location. In the absence of any significant justification and having regard to the adverse impact that development on the site would have on the established landscape character and visual amenity of the area, the development is considered to be contrary to NPF 4 policies 17 and 29 and Clackmannanshire LDP policies SC 23 and SC 24. Reason for refusal 2 is that the introduction of a house and associated curtilage on this greenfield site is considered to have an adverse impact on the natural environment of the site and the local landscape character of the area. The permanent development would erode the countryside character of the site and contribute to permanent fragmentation of a wooded area. The house is not necessary to support the sustainable management of a viable rural business where there is essential need for a worker to live permanently at or near their place of work, or benefit from any other acceptable locational justification. The application is considered to be contrary to NPF 4 policies 4 and 6 and Clackmannanshire LDP policy EA4. For the review itself, you'll find the applicant's supporting statement at page 10 of your pack. The applicant believes that the site is brownfield, not countryside. The applicant is also of the view that there is already housing on the site. While it's true to say that there are houses and businesses adjacent to the site as already set out, there is no development on the site itself. The development of residential uses to the south and east are uses linked to the Riding Centre and Wildlife Centre. Brownfield land is land which is previously developed. In this case, while the land was previously part of a colliery, this use ceased in the 1980s and the land was restored and has returned to a natural state. It's classed by the Planning Authority as countryside. The applicant relies on the adjacent development as justification for development of this site, but these uses are either long-standing, as is the case with Devonbank Cottage, or were assessed as compliant with the applicable policies at the time, either requiring a countryside location or supporting an existing rural business. As already stated, the chalet to the north is not approved. A small cabin for animal welfare purposes is what is approved in that location in planning terms. In terms of objections to the application, there was one objection at the application stage from the SSPCA, who run the Wildlife Centre. This related to the access road. This objection was not considered material in planning terms, and no further comment has been submitted in relation to this review by the SSPCA. The policies that are relevant here and their full analysis are set out in Mr. Johnston's report within section 8. You'll find that from page 48 onwards in your pack. The site is identified as countryside in the LDP, which requires analysis against policies 17 and 29 of NPF 4 and SC 23 and 24 of the LDP. It has been used for grazing or been part of a wooded area for many years. So the proposal does not meet the applicable criteria of policy 17. It is not an allocated site. The land is already in a natural state and it is not proposed as part of a viable rural business. The aims of policy 29 are also not met, as the House would make no contribution to the viability and sustainability of rural community or economic activity. Policies SC 23 and 24 of the LDP relate to development and residential development in the countryside. To outweigh the general presumption against such development, certain criteria have to be met. These are the need for a countryside location, to maintain and enhance visual amenity and landscape character, where development could be sympathetically integrated within a cluster, or where a house is integral to management of a countryside business. These criteria are not met in this case. The second reason for refusal is based on the policies which seek to protect the natural environment. Policy 4 seeks to ensure natural places are protected and restored. Policy 6 protects woodlands. Policy EA4 of the LDP requires the location of development to maintain overall landscape integrity. Permanent development of the site would erode this countryside character and would not comply with these policies. While there are applicable policies listed in the report that could or would be met, its failure to accord with the policies around rural development and natural places outweigh these. The proposal would also extend development on the north side of the private road and could create a precedent for further development in the area. In the event that the review body did decide to make a decision, conditions could be imposed which would deal with matters such as biodiversity, contaminated land, and other construction issues. But the analysis within the officer's report is commended to you. And that's all I have for you, unless you have any questions for me.
Thanks, Fiona. I'll ask the members if they have any questions. Councillor Bilson.
Fiona, on page 41, we've got the outline of the site. Can you remind me whether it's still a convention that the application site is outlined in red and then in blue the ownership of the applicant is outlined? Is that Is that
That's
still
correct,
the
yes.
planning convention, and is that a true representation of the land ownership situation in terms of the plan that's been provided, as far as you're aware?
I think the blue on this plan just shows the distances. It's not shown on a key there that they're showing the wider land ownership. So no, it doesn't show the full land ownership of the applicant in that area.
Okay, thanks, Fiona. And if we were to proceed with this, that's maybe a piece of information that we would require if we feel it necessary. I'd just like that noted. Thank you.
Anyone else? Fiona, is the issue of precedent is obviously one that's quite concerning in these kind of situations. Is there any evidence of precedent in favour of this application?
I'm not aware that there is. There's nothing other than the Birches, which is the house tied to the SSPCA. There is no development on the north side of the private road here. No residential development, sorry. There is obviously agricultural use and a number of containers and other items used by the wider landowner for his business.
Okay, thanks, that's fine. So there's no supporting precedent then. Okay. On the question of one set of NPF4 policies being outweighed by another set, how do you assess the relative weights in a situation like this? You know, we've chosen 4 policies basically, I think, 4, 6, 19 and 20, 17 and 29 or other way around. And their failures, if you like, or the failure to meet those policy expectations has outweighed everything else. Is that something that should or could be questioned, or is that a fairly normal procedure in these situations?
That's a fairly normal procedure. We look at the policies in planning terms as a balance. And while there are policies, as I mentioned, that could be met, these are things like being able to sort out transport or knowing where accesses are, and items, you know, such as making sure that there are adequate heating and cooling facilities for a site, for example. Whereas the policies around rural development are the ones which deal with the use and what use this land should and could be put to and what should be protected.
Okay, so it's not a question of evidence, just finding a majority of policies that are.
No, it's the relative importance.
One failure, and that's it. Kind of, you need to score 100% in the exams.
No, it's not a case of passing a policy or passing a number of policies 100%. It is a balance, and it is the relative importance of these in planning terms. And I would agree with the analysis in the officer's report that the important policies here are the protection of the rural environment and the resistance of further development in the countryside, unless certain criteria are met.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand where the weighting comes from. Is this just the thinking behind NPF4, that these are significant policies that are chunkier and meatier than some of the others?
Yes, I mean, it comes down to an individual planning officer or an individual planning judgment, and it is, you know, which policies here are the ones that are protecting or should be looked at in more detail. A lot of the policies that are listed in the report are more practical issues, whereas these policies around rural development are controlling and ensuring the protection of the rural environment in years to come, as opposed to policies which just detail how an individual site should come forward.
That's fine, thanks, I understand that, Fiona, thank you for that. I'll ask my fellow members if they have any points to raise on that. Councillor Fairley?
Thanks, Chair. Fiona, in page 49, it talks about the house is not demonstrated to be necessary to support sustainable management of a black rural business or an essential need for a worker to live permanently. Is that is that just on the basis that the application didn't specify that, or has it attempted to claim that and been disregarded?
The application, as far as we're aware, is purely for a residential house in this location. It's not in any way linked to a business. It is just to be a residential house.
Could I just follow through in that? Has the applicant provided any additional information in terms of the vision for the development of the site in relation to the house, or is this all the information that's been submitted in terms of supporting his application?
This is all of the information. It's a planning permission in principle, so you wouldn't expect full details of the house, but if there was an intention to try and rely on one of these criteria to justify residential development in the countryside, then that should have been put forward at the application stage and wasn't. So the application has been assessed as residential development with none of the locational justification for a countryside location.
Yeah, I think that's an important consideration that something coming in at a later stage could not be taken into account in this discussion, because we are merely assessing the correctness of the judgment made by the officer at the time with the information that he had. So if there was something else, then it would probably need to be an appeal to the decision. If we were to pass the decision of the officer, and yet we knew there was something in the background, then the applicant could appeal that decision again and have the new evidence looked at. I think that's correct. Is that right?
Well, in terms of the way the LRB works is that the applicant cannot provide any new evidence in terms of the review. You're basing your review on the information exactly that was presented to the planning officer at the time. This is the final stage, and so unless there was something of a legal nature which would be deemed as judicial review, then that would be the only way that you could challenge the decision of this board.
Okay. Stand corrected on that. Okay, well, on the face of it, it looks fairly straightforward. I'm not aware of any wrinkles that would make me think that the officer's decision was faulty, given the bias within the NPF4 of certain policies against certain others. That seems to be the crux of the matter. It's just the way, and that's really quite important in this decision, I think, because if all the policies had equal weight, then you could see that numerically the decision could have gone the other way. But in fact, some of the policies are considered more important than others, for me, would seem to suggest that if we accept that at face value, there really is not much more to be said on the matter, but I value your opinion, Jim, on that point. Donald.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you that the applicant hasn't provided in the original application any kind of vision as to how the site would be developed, whether the house would be replacing the 3 containers in the chalet on site, whether the house indeed would be there to support the livestock that exist, or whether the livestock element would be extended. So in terms of the current use, the countryside use as defined for grazing, it does appear as if there's enough facilities on site to allow that activity and land use to proceed without the need for the extension of a house.
Obviously, point if you want to
bring you in now.
Thank you. It's just to clarify, there is no. It's for you to determine weight of policy. There is no policy within NPF4 that's more important than the others. It's how you determine the weight to be placed upon them. The officer is of the view that the weighting is in favour of protecting the countryside location, and therefore those are the policies that are of importance in the planning balance when that decision was made. Okay, there is no saying that one policy trumps another. It's for you to look at the policies and determine what you view as those of the material weight, those that are of importance to you. I'd also just clarify that there's no the application is not to replace the chalet to the north of the site. The chalet, which doesn't have permission, is not within the site boundary. It sits to the north and it's not covered by this application. The containers are to the north, those are permitted, but the chalet to the north was not permitted and should have been removed and replaced with a smaller cabin. The site itself is discrete from those elements.
Thank you, Jennifer. Clarification which rather puts the burden back on us then, Jeff. To make a decision of whether these...
Fiona, just so that I'm very clear about this, you used two terms, chalet versus cabin. I take it a cabin's smaller than the chalet, but they're still performing the same function.
My understanding is, yeah, it is a small, basically shed that has been approved that would allow someone to get changed while they're looking after the horses or to shelter if it's raining. The chalet that is in place is a large, effectively residential caravan that does not have permission to be on the site. And I say the site, it does not have permission to be on the land to the north of the application site.
Do we feel then that the policies that are conflicted, which I've got NPF here, relevant ones, I read through it. There's major conflict 4, 7, what was it, 29 and 17. It seems on the basis that those more directly are the important ones, and as Fiona was saying, that many of the other policies are more about peripheral and organisational aspects of the development. These seem to be a little bit more core. That's how I felt when I read it through. I don't know if you gentlemen have the same opinion, because we are going to have to give an opinion very shortly.
Yes, Chair, I think our countryside policies and development in the countryside are very clear, and that was the founding principles of refusing this application. As we've kind of drawn out from our questioning, there is enough welfare facilities on site to accommodate for the countryside use for the care of the pony, Highland cow and wildfowl, as well as potential losses on site. And the applicant doesn't appear to have provided any further vision in terms of how the site could have been developed to be consistent with our site policies.
Any thoughts on how it swings?
Nothing more meaningful than what's been said here. I think I've read that, listening to the contribution from Fiona. At this stage, I'm content that the decision that's taken in also is the right one. It's protecting the policies that matter to us.
Well, if we think we have enough information, I'll ask you to confirm that, to make a decision. We can take that decision now. Do you feel we have enough information?
Yes, I do. Look at the policy principles. Yes, I do.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's decide then. Raise your hand if you're voting to uphold the planning department's decision. Okay. That's unanimous. Right. Well, the LRB has met and has decided to uphold the planning application. There will be a letter going out to the applicant and his agent, although I think his agent knows now the situation. Thank you all for attending. Appreciate your time and trouble. See you next time.
Thank you.